And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode 18. Well, we are back on the East Coast, both physically and metaphorically, after a trip to Texas I took, and we are back with another Aerostar, both physically and metaphorically. As some of you may have seen, I just took delivery of a beautiful 1993 Ford Aerostar Sport in a stunning shade of teal aqua, we'll call it. So a perfect moment to transition now to talk about yet another Aerostar, of course. And here we have just a gorgeous, stunning 1994 Ford Aerostar listed in Gibbstown, New Jersey. New Jersey is getting a lot of Aerostars ticking up on the classifieds lately, I must say. Seems like a hotbed for Aerostars, and that's fine by me. Listed for $9,000, quite a hefty sum based on the normal market for an Aerostar, but you'll soon see why. And as the seller says, indeed, pictures speak for themselves. Clean and clear title, runs and drives beautiful with zero issues. True, all caps, 39,000 miles, and a 5-speed manual transmission, rear-wheel drive. Don't like the price? Don't buy it. It does have a few scrapes, but zero, all caps, rust. I can send VIN to serious buyers. No trades at all. Cash only. Drive it across the country. Yes, the end-all, the be-all, end-all of any classified ad when they want to give an impression of reliability. Drive it across the country. Driving it across the country is a very funny phrase in the automotive world now. With electric cars, you're seeing range anxiety, and with people saying, well, what if I randomly just need to drive across the country? What am I going to do? So, and of course, the Great American Road Trip is literally driving across the country. So it seems to be burned in our minds ever since the sort of fraudulent concept of manifest destiny, where we needed to wipe out, millions and millions of sovereign people. And I'll try not to get on my high horse here. We've had this idea that we need to drive it across the country. So this seller, in trying to convey the reliability of this quite stunning Aerostar with incredibly low mileage, has invoked that phrase, drive it across the country. Perhaps after the end of every presidential speech, instead of saying God bless America, they should say drive it across the country. And what better vehicle to do so in than a Ford Aerostar? So the pictures speak for themselves, and they say 1,000 words, I guess. So we should probably look at the pictures, shall we? And there's quite a few pictures, and I do appreciate any seller, especially when they're commanding, somewhat of a high price, but actually when they're commanding any price, having many, many pictures. It just helps to, the fact that they could take the effort to take so many pictures maybe says something about the effort that they have taken in maintaining the vehicle. So we have a beautiful little Rosie's bumper sticker here. I want to compile, sort of as an aside here, a sort of photo booth of the laziest Craigslist pictures ever, or Facebook Marketplace pictures ever. I used to do this once upon a time when I had Aerostars of Craigslist, and sometimes you'll see, a picture of a vehicle parked in a parking lot, like a block away, taken through someone's window where the blinds haven't even been, totally lifted. It's like peeking through the blinds, and it's like they just wanted to get this listing out, and as long as they could capture on camera some speck of the vehicle to show you that it really existed, they were content to do that. So I think that's a very funny trope too. But here we have beautiful pictures that have some effort put into them. So we always say Janky, do thank you, and appreciate that. So obviously a stunning dark green. This is very and you can even see it glistening in the sun here, like sort of an emerald green. This is a very classic Aerostar color, but I have to say one of my favorites too. I actually think it looks good in a two-tone, sure, but I think it looks good just in a monochromatic too. Now, of course, it's not totally monochromatic because you have these trademark gray bumpers, but you'll notice, and you can tell that this is probably a true mileage car because a lot of times these bumpers will be, oh, as the fire alarm goes off. Never a dull moment here in Janky Town. Hopefully you can hear me over that, and hopefully one time the fire alarm got stuck on for like 40 minutes, and you just heard this noise for 40 minutes straight. And we all had to Google, can fire alarms get stuck? And turns out they can. And turns out it did. I rarely edit these pieces. I actually never edit these pieces, but I might have to edit this and wait for this fire alarm to go away. All right, well, it seems like the fire alarm is waning. So as I was saying, an indication that this is probably a truly a low mileage car and has probably seen some time in a garage is that a lot of times these gray bumpers will have faded quite a bit, and these still seem to have quite a bit of sheen and reflectivity on them. And you can see when they first came out, like it's hard to find an Aerostar in like almost new condition, but they did have this sort of bright sheen on them, this like clear coat over the gray plastic. And it does add quite a bit of, just presence to them. So I do much appreciate that, in very good condition. Now, we did say there are several scrapes on the car, and quite a few when you get down to it, but you could always do some light paint correction on those. But the trademark gray bumpers here kind of insinuating and demonstrating the cargo aspect to the Aerostar. It was a purpose-built, certainly not bare bones because the interiors had quite a bit of advanced features for the time, audio system in the back and such things like that. But the gray bumpers were kind of a trademark. Now, occasionally you do see an Aerostar with body color matched bumpers. I believe those are all aftermarket things or things that were done by the owners of the vehicles, and certainly this would look good with some emerald green bumpers, but I don't think it looks any worse with the gray bumpers. Sort of just a nice little sort of accent piece there, and we still get plenty of emerald green in our lives. It does have this beautiful also little white pinstripe. Now we'll see in some other photos, maybe close up, we can see if it's actually a solid stripe or if there's many little stripes in there. But a standard length model with a manual transmission is certainly, I would say, a very sought after Aerostar spec. Now, you did get manual transmissions in the extended length, but I see many more manual transmissions in the standard length, which I'm not sure why that is, but be that as it may, that seems like most of the standard transmissions, just from the eyeball test, came in the standard length. And it kind of, I saw a post on Instagram that was saying it's got all the, or maybe it was a YouTube video that has it's got all the, and I've always said this too, it has all the makings of a sports car: manual transmission, rear wheel drive. So I always say that as sort of as a joke, but certainly if you wanted to tune one of these and lower it a little bit, it would be amazing to see like an Aerostar as like a drift car or something like that. Now, I would have to think that'd be somewhat rollover prone, but maybe you could increase the center, or decrease or lower the center of gravity and put some weight down there, and perhaps maybe you could drift an Aerostar. Why not? But you probably wouldn't want to do it in this one because it's so pristine. So moving on, we have our lovely Aerostar interior. Now, this being a 94, of course, it is the updated interior and a wonderful, just sort of like bulbous, round sort of console here. And having finally spent time in and driven the quote-unquote post-facelift interior. It is very lovely. The radio works very well. It's got a nice sound system. For my standards, I'm not a super audiophile. I'm more of a lo-fi person, so for me it sounds great. Of course, you see this great manual transmission lever with the big boot and the giant school bus shifter. A very, very fun transmission to operate. And the seats here are not, well, they are two-tone in material, but they're sort of monochromatic in color. The lovely Aerostar seats that we talk about all the time. Both bench seats still intact, and they look like they're in very, very good condition. I will say the sliding door on these is heavy, but it was engineered quite well because it slides quite easily. I don't know if that's just the ball bearings or the roller bearings or whatever, but they do slide into position quite easily. Quite an easy door to slide open if once it unclicks and you get over the heft of it. So I'm guessing this is probably the 3-liter. I honestly can't tell you offhand. I have not looked at enough 4 and 3 liters to know exactly what they look like just from viewing them, but I would have to wager a guess that this is the 3-liter, being standard wheelbase manual transmission, and that was more common. I think the 4-liter was probably more common in the all-wheel drive models just because it had a little bit more weight to push down the road. Beautiful shot there of the engine bay. Looks fairly clean. Not pristine, certainly, but it looks like a newer battery. Great shot there with the telephone pole. That's quite artistic, and you see sort of this front 3/4 view and a somewhat wide-angle lens, and you see just how good the paint is overall. I mean, the sun is really like glistening off of it, and it does have sort of some metallic flake in there. A nice sort of color options on these Aerostars. And we see it has the sort of what I call the slicer wheel hubcaps. Though they did have like sort of an alloy sort of slicer wheel. But this is just the hubcap, which was, I think the alloy wheels came more in your upscale versions, probably your Eddie Bauer and some of your more XLT versions. This being a manual transmission, it was probably closer to something of a base model because a manual transmission is usually spec'd in your lower trims, as was the case usually back in the day. Standard transmissions were like sort of the option, and an automatic transmission was sort of an upgrade because they were seen as the more sort of luxurious format. But it is cool because it's not a cargo spec, it's a passenger vehicle spec with a manual transmission, which is very, very cool. And the Dodge Caravans, of course, did also have a manual transmission. I'm not sure if Chevy Astros were ever offered with a manual transmission. Now, of course, and I've seen a lot of comments recently, there's this sort of rivalry between the Aerostar and the Astro van for many reasons, and I'll do a total separate video on that. But if indeed the Chevy Astro was not offered with a manual, I'd certainly say that's a feather in the Aerostar's cap. Beautiful steering wheel. One of my favorite steering wheels of all time. Just incredibly functional. You have your horn button right on your steering wheel. That's very nice. You have cruise control, so all the amenities and features. You do have your lights are on a manual pull button, which also the BMW Z3 has this, and it's one of my favorite features of the Z3. Just a simple gauge cluster, everything you need, nothing you don't. Just a well put together, simple, basic interior that's very functional. I do like the sort of all gray interior. Now, I do famously love gray interiors. I think it's a beautiful interior color. I love tan, certainly, and black in the right car can look very, very nice, but everything just has that sort of clean look to it. Like, you don't see a lot of wear around your shifter handle. Now, of course, in the early renditions of the manual transmission Aerostar, it was a different little shift knob, and I believe after probably 91 or 92 it switched to this different knob, and actually your whole stock is a little bit different too. It's a little bit thicker. Now this is a Mazda unit, and I believe they used a couple of different Mazda units, so this is probably the later incarnation of that. But a very, very, like I've said, fun transmission to operate. It's very novel to have a manual transmission in a minivan, of course, and it does not disappoint. So this is just there's a couple of sort of low mileage Aerostars up for sale now that are commanding sort of high prices. There's one I believe listed for $12,000. That's like an 86 or 87, and that is a automatic transmission, but that's sort of like your classic original Aerostar. I would say for my money, this is one of the coolest low mileage specs out there. Like, I would say this is actually the one to have if you want like a museum piece that is will demonstrate all the sort of cool things about what an Aerostar is and was. Another great shot of your interior. You can just see how clean everything is. And again, I talk about the two-tone seats, how you have this sort of, it's not quite velour, but it's a more like fuzzy fabric that's like very fun to touch and wave your hand across, almost very much like when Buick offered cloth seats. They were this like sort of like luxury soft material, and then you have this like a longer thread cloth with like a little stitch pattern, and they're very similar to a lot of Honda interiors of the time that were very nice. I do love cloth seats. I think that when I was younger, leather seats were like this giant luxury item. But as I get older, I appreciate cloth seats. I think they're a little harder to keep clean, but if you can keep stains off of them, I think they look very, very nice. And the longer they age without getting dirty, the cooler they become. Great, big, thick armrests. I do think the Ford Transit, and as a side here, has terrible armrests. Mine fell off. I guess they're notorious for just falling off and not being very good. So it's funny how Ford actually took a step back with their armrests, because these armrests are fantastic, having just used one for 4 hours the other day. Again, your gauge cluster, your great photographic evidence of the true mileage. And look at how clean this is. No dust, no cracks in your gauge cluster, any of that. All the, screws and pieces holding it together are all very intact. No bubbling or cracking anywhere. And I actually don't know if mine is the same, but I'd never really quite noticed this orange and yellow. Of course, orange and yellow, the Janky AF colors. Seen here on the gauge cluster. Very, very nice. You have your hazard light button there, which I think is a cool placement, and I love the red color-coded knob there, or button. Now here you see some of the jankiness. Now we do appreciate the transparency of the seller and showing some of these scratches and dings here. A little bit of dent, but you could probably take it to a body shop, and if you're buying this Aerostar for close to $10,000, you probably want to go ahead and invest in whatever repairs are going to make it absolutely perfect. We do see the pinstripe here is a 3 pinstripe setup there, which is very, very nice. Little white pinstripe. A lot of Aerostars, maybe this is a product of the 90s, but a lot of them had, even if they're a solid color, had some little doodad or little thing, just a little accent piece on them. And this is certainly no exception. Again, little scratches and dings. Unfortunate that that happened, but we do appreciate the transparency. Little nicks on the bumper. But you can see how clean and shiny this bumper is overall, and these little chrome pieces that run through in the grooves. I feel like this chrome was not on all of them. Sometimes I just feel like it's an empty groove, but this one has the chrome accents, so that's lovely. Again, you can see the quality of the paint here and the shininess. It probably does need a trip to the car wash, but that's okay. Underside, a little bit of surface rust, but you can see on mine I have this issue where these pinch points were jacked upon, and they've sort of like bent, and you want to lift your vehicle up from the frame as opposed to these points, because they will bend quite easily, and this one looks like it's in very, very good condition. More scrapes, and that's the thing, it does have quite a few on it. You're probably looking at spending a little bit of money on a body shop if you want to make it perfect. Again, fairly clean. Very clean, I would say. No even really surface rust on your frame or anything like that. Some of your control arms and things here, and your exhaust pieces have a little bit of surface rust. But for 94, 2004, 2014, almost a 30-year-old vehicle, pretty darn impressive. And back to the beginning. So, just really a stunning piece, and they seem like they're very firm on the price. It's been listed now for 3 weeks, so we'll see if they get their price. Perhaps they'll lower it a little bit, or maybe they'll just hold on to it and let it increase in value. I would say this is definitely a bring a trailer candidate if they wanted to get more of a national audience and more of a discerning sort of like car enthusiast audience. But now that it's been featured on Year of the Aerostar, of course, the eyeball views on it will just explode. So Janky do thank you to everyone involved for that. So there you have it. Just a really, belle of the ball here. This is a stunning Aerostar, certainly a well-preserved piece of history. And I hope if and when it does get sold, it goes to a buyer that is going to appreciate it and be a custodian for this vehicle and take care of it, because it definitely deserves it. And, you know, get in one of these things and drive it and row through those gears, you will not be disappointed. It's a very, very interesting and fun vehicle to drive. You can use it for almost anything. I would stay away from using it as a work vehicle. It's almost too nice for that at this point. Boy, just a stunning vehicle and a pleasure to look at and talk about. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Year of the Aerostar, and we'll see you for another one soon. Until then, Janky do Thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.